Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video. And today we have an updated starter deck for Kaido for the Limited Battle Series. So again, this is a tournament at the end of this month, beginning of the next month for people who have the starter decks. It has the meta of you can run any cards from, I guess, 2 copies of your starter deck. So any card that comes with 2 of the starter deck, you can bump up to 4, as well as the promos for it. So this is going to be for Kaido. And honestly, he's my favorite when he works. He is very, very dependent on seeing your Onigashima Island on, turn 2 essentially, when you have 3 or 4 Dons. So if you're able to see this, the deck feels really, really good, and when you don't see it, it feels really bad. So that's kind of the idea with it, which it kind of stinks from like a longevity or like consistency kind of standpoint, but I do like the deck when it goes off and everything. So probably my second favorite deck of the starter decks. Crocodile is still my favorite, but we'll go over this guy real quick. And also before we start too, we're not running the 7-drop promo. So if you guys don't have this card, because I know it is a little bit rare right now, I don't think it's super needed. It is kind of nice that you do have an 8K with Banish, but it also is a 7-drop, which can be a little bit impactful for you because 7-drops are kind of easy to get rid of, especially against Crocodile. They can bounce them back to your hand for 4. Or with like a Don Quixote do Flamingo or with Sables. So it kind of isn't worth it against that. Kind of an 8-drop is a little bit better. The other 7-drop we are running is the King. Close to it. He's a 6-drop, and we're okay with bouncing this back to our hand most of the time. So that's kind of there. But anyways, Kaido, the biggest thing about him is that you want to make sure you use your -7 on him correctly. He's a little bit tricky to do that, but normally we just kind of build a bunch of bodies and then we use the -7 go, kind of swinging with all of them. So we have no 1-drops because no kind of 1-drops exist for this deck besides the vanilla, and it's not really worth it. So we are running 4 of the Black Marias, and having a blocker that also has a counter cost is kind of nice for us. This is like our best turn 2 play. If we go second, so try to find that. We are also running a couple of Sheep's Head just to have +1K counter on your hand. A lot of the best cards in our deck just kind of get stuck in our hand because we do have a lot of high cost cards that don't have counter cost. So having a couple extra for them in our hand is kind of worth it. Going to our 3-drops, we are running only 2 copies of Who's Who's. You can bump this up if you want. It is kind of nice to have a card that says, pop something that's 3 cost or less, especially when playing against, when on curve, he's really good. But here's the thing. Here's my experience with the deck. Turn 2, you always want to play Onigashima Island, right? And then that will get you from 3 Dawn to 4, and then you start your next turn with 6 Dawn, right? And so best case, you play for 6 a King on turn 3 instead of playing a Who's Who's, and this is just a better card. And like for the same kind of slot, like there's just not time to play both Onigashima Island and Who's Who's at the same time. So it's just fine, but I think a lot of you guys will find that this will just be stuck in your hand most of the time, and the Dawn -1 can actually mean that you're off the curve that you want. And so we're there. We just know we're running 4 of this. I'm just going to put this over here. It's a given for us. We're running 4 X Drakes again, just for counter cost. I guess if you're a bad player and you don't see your Onigashima Island on turn 2, you can play it. Also, you can play Jack. Jack's like the best like backup for it, because you just trash 1 card from your hand to ramp 1 Dawn for that turn. So it's fine. You would always still want to see the Onigashima Island, but it's still like if you're on turn 3, you can ramp up to 4, get to 6, and then you can still play your King on the next turn. So that's still like a way to get there. It goes -1 in hand, and it's not great, but there is, a 2 ways to get there, which is kind of nice. And then we are playing Sasaki at 4 as well. I don't think you play this unless like you're really digging for card draw, or you're literally trying to find something. He's just usually for a counter, but if you do need to get that card draw, you do it. Next up, we're playing page 1, and we're playing 4 of the ulti, because the ulti is just so good, being able to be a +2K counter, especially in a deck like this where we have to be very defensive with it. Being able to run 4 of these is good. You rarely want to play page 1, like do the effect to play page 1 unless like you need to go wide, and sometimes that is the case. Like if you don't find like a big Kaido, you do want to go wide, but you do have to recognize that you're losing 3K of counter by doing this. So I don't think it's worth it most of the time, but sometimes there are some ways for it. Next up, we have Queen. This is the best card in the deck most of the time. Like you love to see Queen. So it's 5 costs. You're able to, it's a blocker, and for Dawn -1, you get to draw 2 and discard 1. If you see extra copies of your Onigashima Island after you play one, it's great for discarding them, and having a blocker that's also a 6K, which means that they can, it can live a 5K swing, I think is fantastic. So Queen is good there. And then we've been talking about him. We are running 4 of the Kings. When I first started playing this deck, I thought that was too much, that this was just stuck in my hand most of the time, and it did nothing. But man, it's just, if you can just consistently get to 6 Dawn on your 3rd turn, it is fantastic. You always want to see it. Like, obviously, if you're going second, you'll always see this on turn 2 or on turn 3. And then if you find Onigashima Island or Jack, you're able to ramp up and do it. Being able to play a 7K body is great. It's also a 6 cost, which means that most easy removal and a 7K. So there's not an easy way to remove it, and you can just do some big swings throughout the game with it. It's just really good on curve. Talking about good on curve, we also do run 3 of the Kaido. You can bump this up to 4 if you want, but 3 is normally the number that makes sense for me. Obviously, he's a really good powerhouse, and if you do max out at 10 Dawn, he's like the best card to slam down. You're able to essentially pop at something that's 6 cost or less, as well as being able to swing 10K with it because of it. So it's just strong, and you're able to do a lot of damage. Like, this almost guarantees a damage on the first turn. And if this is out and then you use your -7 from your leader, you still have like a 10K swing that your opponent has to get out of, which is pretty big. And then we, just to kind of round it out, we do have Blast Breath at 4, as well as Braccio Bomber at 3. So Blast Breath is like one of the best counters in this game. Being able to just do -4K for essentially Dawn -1. And like, if you're already at like 10 Dawn at the start of your turn, this is fantastic. So I do think that is good there. Braccio Bomber is just okay. And if you don't like this card, I don't blame you for it. It's sometimes dead in hand. You do get to KO something with 6 cost or less and pop something. And in your life, being able to add a Dawn, a ramp a Dawn from it is good. It's just sometimes it's again, like, it's a worse copy of King most of the time, and unless there's like a really good thing that you want to get rid of, it's just fine. 6 or less actually hits a bunch of things, but a lot of the top end of a lot of decks are 7 costs, so this doesn't get like rid of their big boy. So if this is a 7 cost, the KO is 7 or less, I'd be on board. But since it's a 6 and KO is a 6 or less, I don't know. And also, to pay 6 and ramp a Dawn doesn't really mean that much. It's so late into your Dawn. Like, if you already have 6 Dawn and you're playing this, you're going to go to 7 Dawn, then 9 Dawn next turn instead of 8 Dawn, and that, I mean, I guess that gets you to King sometimes, or Kaido sometimes, but like, it's just fine. Like, it's just, Dawn ramping doesn't matter as much when you're already at the top end, right? So it's just fine. Being able to KO something is just good. And again, we are running 4 of these islands. You need to see this every game if you want to win most of the time. Like, if you, I don't know, you just miss out. Like, if you have 7 turns and you don't play this, you miss out on essentially 7 Dawn for that game, which is exactly one of these Kaido procs, right? So you kind of need to see these consistently and be able to do that there. So that is it. Any cards I didn't add, again, like the Who's you kind of don't really need. Also, the All-Star Disasters, I think these are just fine. If you like All-Star Disaster, go for it. You just get to draw 1 Reveal Dawn from your Dawn deck, but most of the time, like, it's not really worth it. If you want card draw, Queen is usually a better card for that. If you want ramp, you want King. And Sasaki being able to Dawn -1 to draw a card, I think, is fine too, especially since, like, even though it's a 4K body, and 4K bodies are not as good as 5Ks, because 5Ks can just swing and do, threaten damage always, and you have to not invest a Dawn for it. It's still something. So anyways, this is my list. Let me know what I got wrong, what you guys are playing in yours. But again, I really do like Kaido, and when you're able to see your curve and do what you want, it feels very, very good. So that's going to be it. Let me know if you guys want to see the Luffy or the Usus Kid list next, and I'll catch you all next time.